Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager.
And I'm Brian Michael. Today we have a special episode. Every episode is special. But today we're actually going to be reviewing a lot of science fiction films because, well, we look at all the list of movies that we want to watch. We kind of go, well, how would we categorize them? Oscar-nominated films, foreign films. And so this time we just did some sci-fi films and we put those all together. So if you're a big sci-fi nut, get ready. And if you're not, well, get ready anyway. Before we begin, though, I do want you to, if you're watching us on YouTube, to click the subscribe button, and as well as the little bell that'll give you notifications when we post a new episode. It will also make Nicolas Cage deny a script. Because isn't that what we all want at this point in time? Just turn something down, Mr. Cage. Please, just a movie. So we're going to start things off with The Face of Another. This is directed by, oh boy, Hiroshi Teshigahara.
Good.
Did I get it right?
It's close enough. That's in the ballpark.
Or as I know, the guy who made Woman in the Dunes, which is one of my all-time favorite films ever, hands down. And this film came out, and because of Woman in the Dunes being such a big hit, this was actually a big letdown because people didn't think it was as good as Woman in the Dunes. Those people are crazy. This has a man who has been scarred by an industrial accident on his face, and so he goes to see a doctor who actually gives him a synthetic face to put over the scars so that he may continue living a normal life. Because he felt very much invisible, people did not give him the same respect, people wouldn't make eye contact with him, his wife wouldn't want anything to do with him, so with this new face, he now finds not only does he have a new identity, but he also has freedom to do whatever he wants. He immediately gets 2 different apartments, starts to live two different lives. What is absolutely amazing about this film right off the bat is the look of this film. And the doctor's office is the most amazing doctor's office I have ever seen.
I don't know if it's a doctor's office or something out of a bad dream.
It is awesome.
It's crazy.
They have this plexiglass that's clear with different body parts on it, or different drawings on it, or different anatomy
so it looks like
outlines.
it looks like anatomical parts floating in front of your screen.
And then people will stand in front of them, and they kind of gives an outline and drawing to them, which is absolutely amazing. And so this, I don't want to give too much about this film away, but immediately he tries to go in and try to play a hoax on some people because he wants to see what their reaction would be to this other person, to see if they would be necessarily still a good person to stand by him and who he is to them. And when you watch this film, as we did watch this one together, you start to realize that this is post-World War II, and Japan itself was dealing with that identity issue and the same type of issue with scars and losing its masculinity or its strength and going through an identity crisis. And that's exactly what this film does.
Without ever bringing up the war at all, which is brilliant. It's
and
not
then
even referenced.
The end scene on that sidewalk with all the crowd of faceless people that go by is just jaw-dropping and awesome. I think I almost cheered when we watched this because that blew me away.
That scene was amazing.
I love this film. We watched this a long time ago. I have been waiting so long to review this. This is an amazing film.
I think one of the episodes we taped right after we actually watched the film, but wasn't this episode, he was like, can we just review Face of Another? I said, no, we're doing that later. But yeah, the actor Tatsuya Nakadai, who is a huge star in Japan at this time, he did Ron, Cage Musha, Yojimbo, Harakiri, Sword of Doom. Basically name an awesome Japanese film from the 50s and 60s he was in it. And he becomes the face of another. So he's the person once he puts on the face. We never see him pre-face because he just has this weird, creepy bandage on his face at the beginning. It also brings up, interestingly, at the very beginning, we hear he's kind of an upper level management guy, the character. He's just known as Mr. Akagi, I think, or something like that. And he has had an accident. It's like an industrial accident with all these burns on his face. So again, it brings up the idea of, like with Japan, of course, radiation, nuclear, something horrible happening that's disfigured him and taken away his identity. So there's so many one wonderful layers that you just don't normally see in your typical kind of like cheesy sci-fi horror movie. This one just goes deeper and deeper in all these layers. It's kind of it's experimental in the visuals. There's some really weird camera angles. I mean, we talked about the set pieces, but the camera angles are all over the place
Such
in a good
incredible
way,
film.
not in a distracting, because the whole film is disorienting. The whole experience, it's like a dream world. Like even his doctor, it's like, what kind of doctor is this? He's also a psychiatrist. He wants to
Yes.
study him. He wants to know what's going to happen when this guy takes on this new identity.
Do you remember
And
the
it's very
opening
odd.
images?
The very opening
Very
image.
opening image of the different body parts submerged
coming
in
out of the water.
and coming in and out of the water, which is just absolutely amazing. You know, if you haven't seen Woman in the Dunes, you got to. I mean, these are go to the right to the top of your list. You can watch them online, different streaming, not different streaming. There's one streaming one, and especially that has it, and you'd be struck by this film once you watch it. It's totally, absolutely worth it to seek these out and see them. They're just, they put you in that time and place, especially with Women in the Dunes, and that heat and the sand is what I always think of. This one, there's a seduction. There's a scene where he seduces someone, and you know, we see an awful lot of that in films. And this one was because he was standing above her, and it was just, I really thought that was an incredible shot and a really cool way to have done it. I really thought that was really cool. And then the way that scene ends up playing out, and who this woman is, I'm not going to give anything away, is really incredible. Because the previous scene that they had together plays a lot into it. I don't want to give too much away.
I know, it's hard not to.
This.
And it also takes on issues of, you know, the female characters in the movie are very interesting. You have his wife, there's the secretary, they're you know, one of the things that's interesting is his wife is a victim in the film, you know, of his anger and his feeling of his loss of identity or his loss of masculinity.
Yeah.
And that also ties in with what, you know, I think I remember reading somewhere that, you know, abuse in Japan went up after the war a bit because, you know, men felt so defeated by, you know, what had happened to them in their society. And so, you know, you really see that kind of played in, but again, nothing without calling that out directly, which is what's amazing about it. I also have to mention the music by Takamutsu. Oh, I'm probably saying that wrong. He also did the music for Women in the Dunes, which is awesome. Very experimental as well, not your typical music. Just an amazing movie. Black and white, gorgeous looking.
You can watch this movie several times, and what I found is that, you know, when he goes into the different
you have to
apartments,
like weird stuff like we do.
Well, when he goes to the two different apartments, there's two different people. They're actually shot exactly the same. It's really cool, just the little touches and things that he did. It's just an absolutely amazing film. I just don't see how people, I love Women in the Dunes, but this is by no means a letdown.
It's just as good. I wouldn't say one, it'd be hard. I'd have to watch them back to back to know which
that
one's
would
better.
be so hard, because I've thought about them, like, which is
Very
better? I'm
different.
like, no, we don't have to choose.
No,
between
they're just both
children.
great.
No,
And I'd like to
they're
see
both
more of
amazing
his films. Yeah, so.
There's another one available.
Yep.
I can't wait to watch it without you.
What?
Oh.
Why would you do that?
So we'll move on to our next movie, which is Westworld. Most of you will know it as a very popular television show on pay cable, but this was actually based on a movie written and directed by Michael Crichton, who also wrote Jurassic Park, which so you can kind of see the themes, because this one tells a story of people who spend, what is it, $1,000 a day? It was a very expensive resort where you get to go out and there's 3 different worlds that you can visit. One of them certainly was a Western, the other one was a Roman, and you could go and surrounded by robots, and you could do whatever you want to them, around them, and before them, and all different kinds of things. And of course, this just is very appealing to so many people because you can commit murder. Now, I have actually seen the first season of the television show, and though it is slow, it brings up some very interesting issues when you have the freedom to do things and what really would make you want to go someplace so you could experience what it is to murder somebody. Sure. This film doesn't really get into those things too much, and I was really disappointed by that, because the first half of this film, the first 3/4 of this film, is really slow, and not much kind of happens. It kind of introduces the world, and then one of the robots, famously played by Yul Brynner, is the one that ends up chasing and hunting them down. It becomes a little bit more of a slasher film, and influenced Terminator and actually Halloween, a film we recently reviewed. And so it just took so long to get there. It's such an interesting premise. It's a fantastic premise. But even if they're just going to have it just be a flat out surface with the action like it has in the end, it took so long to get there that it was like, I really didn't care much for the characters anyway. So, shoot them. I don't really care. I found the robot more interesting.
I had the same thought. The characters played by Richard Benjamin and James Brolin.
Richard Benjamin is just,
he's terrible in it. And James Brolin's just whatever too. They're like the two guys and they go to the Old West because they want to live out their fantasies of being in the saloon and taking up with the ladies and shooting people.
Just going to the saloon is really what James Brolin's character.
Yeah, and they're just not interesting characters, so you don't really care what happens to them. Yeah. And the fact that Yul Brynner's gunslinger robot, who says nothing, is the most interesting character is not good. And the set pieces are kind of cheesy, and I know it's low budget, but still. And then they have the Rome world and medieval world, and you don't get to see much of those. And so it's just sort of
I couldn't remember what the third one was. I only mentioned the two.
Was medieval. Medieval.
I remember the Rome one was
Yeah, remember medieval is where they had the guy, the other couple. That was where they were. They were in the medieval world. Rome.
Oh, okay.
The Roman Empire.
That was the Roman Empire? That was medieval?
They were separate. Medieval and Roman Empire were separate.
I don't remember the third one then. So which one?
The third one is the Wild West.
Okay, I remember the West.
That's why it's called Westworld.
The couple was in which one?
Medieval.
So then there was the Roman one. Who was in the Roman one? I don't remember the.
There was nobody we knew in the Roman one.
Okay, that's why.
That was part of the problem with the story is we had characters we met at the beginning. They went into two of the three worlds, and I'm like, so Roman world's just there.
Ignored. Why do we even have it?
They just show it, and they show it dysfunctioning. It's kind of a mess. And you could see why they wanted to make a TV series out of it, because it's a great concept, and it was really poorly executed in this case. I haven't seen the TV series, so I can't say either way.
Tandy Newton's amazing.
But I'm sure it's hard to imagine that it wouldn't be better than this movie. So
yeah, I just could have gotten into so many different themes in there. You really could have just. I thought that was really interesting.
Technology gone awry or something. But then it's kind of dumb. Like they had no backup. Just there were so many things that were just so dumb that.
Then of course, okay. So when you talk about old science fiction movies, my favorite in any of them is the person who sits in front of the board that just has lights that randomly flash. And I'm thinking, what is this person's job? What are they looking at?
They're just pressing buttons, and there's lights that go beep, 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 beep.
They're just standing there in front of it, and they're just little light up lights. And I'm like, what are you doing? Light bright? Is this a pattern? What are you doing?
Light bright. That's what it reminds me of, is light bright. They're connecting the lights. Yeah, you're right, there's no keyboard or button. They're just staring at the board, and the lights are going up.
The reel to reel, I know what that is, but
they had that in Dr. No with James Bond too. I think they had the big board with the lights on it, and there's no.
I don't know what any of that means.
Yeah, I love that. Beep, beep, boop, boop. Yeah, and I love how they have they had no way to get out of that. Anyway, there was just so many problems with the plot that it's after a while I just started commenting on well, that's stupid. Oh, so now they have no way to get there. They had the technology to make robots that are like people and can do everything, including sex like people. They can shoot. They can do everything like people, but they couldn't figure out a way to get out of a room that they're in. Without suffocating.
That's right. Yeah.
But they had this technology, but they suffocate because when the lights are shut down, the lights are connected to the electricity, and when that's shut off, they all just die.
Yeah.
So that's great. That's great great technological planning there. Okay. So we'll move on to our next sci-fi movie. Oh boy. A Boy and His Dog from 1975 by L.Q. Jones, and it is about a young man played by Don Johnson and his telepathic dog. Yes, you heard me right. They're wandering a post-apocalyptic wasteland looking for food and women. And what are they looking to do with those women? Not good things. Let's just say that. Not good things at all. Jason Robards, who's also in this movie in a small part, is a really creepy clown-looking guy who's in charge of this alternative land that's sort of like Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet-ish. It's a place called Topeka where everything looks really pretty, but everyone's really creepy and they have to follow the rules.
Yeah.
And that's like this alternative place that Don Johnson ends up following a pretty girl into, and that becomes a whole other movie at that point. Blood is the name of his dog, who speaks to him throughout the film.
Who's the smartest character in the movie?
Oh, by far. I just was sort of like, okay, toward about 3/4 way through this film, I'm like, I'm okay if everybody in this movie dies and the dog just goes on. And John Johnson's character. Yeah. Now, supposedly, according to some of the things we read about this movie afterwards, it's supposed to be this morality tale because he was raised without parents, the Don Johnson character. He had no way to learn between right and wrong. So then he thinks it's okay to sexually assault every woman he meets. And the film film does not back away from this sexual assault. It's very blatant and all the way up to the last line of the movie, which makes a big joke about the use of women. So if you love misogyny in your sci-fi films, this is the one for you. And I hate to say it because this was recommended to us by several of our viewers when we did a post-apocalyptic episode.
Yep.
And maybe if you watched it in 1975 and you were 16 years old and you were a teenage boy and you were like, wow, this is really cool, and you didn't think about all that, but in the year 2018, I was just watching it going, oh my, this is very offensive. And you know, I'm not always Ms. PC Express here, but it's also not very interesting, and it drags on for what seems like an eternity. At least be short if you're going to have...
It was only like an hour and a half.
I know,
it went
but
on for a long
I know, there was at one point you were like,
time.
how long are we going to be down in this clown world, Topeka? Because it just kind of dragged on. And then there was like the creepy voices over the intercom that just got annoying. And the main character's so dumb that you don't really care about him. And I just felt bad for the dog that he had to follow the stupid human around. So, no, I can't recommend it. Sorry.
I was going to
Needless
ask.
to say,
Okay.
4 stars. So that would be really funny if after that point I said, but I say it's a classic. Misogyny be darned.
Yeah, you know...
What's your male perspective on this, Brian, as a sci-fi fan?
Gosh, let me try to find the words here because I can't find anything I disagree with you on this at all. Yeah, I was really surprised because I had heard of this film. I had heard a lot about this film going into it. So I was like, okay, great. Don Johnson, oh, fine, we'll be okay with it. A talking dog, sure. I hope it's Jason Robards' voice, which we thought at first. I was like, great, I have no problem with that. And I like the dog because the dog just kind of made fun of him the entire time. And the way that the sound mixing was done, it's kind of like those later Bugs Bunny movies that were. It didn't feel like it was there. Felt like it was dubbed in later, and so that's what we kind of got that, which is fine. It took us a while to figure out if sometimes he doesn't speak to the dog. He's actually talking.
He's
to him
telepathic,
with his
yeah.
Telepathic, so his mouth
mouth's
doesn't
not
move
moving.
either.
Yeah, it was
so
weird.
That kind of caught us off guard a little bit.
But sometimes his mouth did move. So
I will say that I like the fact that they, all of the world now was underground because whatever had happened in World War IV,
leveled everything.
It really, it leveled everything, but there were still mountains.
Yeah, anyway, that's just where they
That's
shot.
fine,
It was
that's
low
fine.
budget.
And I like that they did that. I thought that was very interesting because it kept things very low budget, and I liked how they did that. The other world that went down there, I still don't kind of understand what they were doing because anything anyone did wrong, they were punished by death. And I'm thinking, well, eventually, the population, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to use him to
fertilize all the women down in the underworld, but
which he was like, that's great. But then they were doing it at I don't know exactly how that was working. Why that was some sort of milking machine or something. It was just weird. And what I can understand if a 16-year-old kid made this and wrote it and directed it, I would get that. But when it's grown-ups, I don't see.
Yeah, if someone said this was like a 16-year-old kid's project, I'd still say don't release it. But in 1975, maybe I'd be like, okay. In 2008, I'm like, might be time for some sensitivity classes.
What grown-up made this movie? It was
L.Q. Jones, who was in a bunch of Peckinpah films. He's a good
really
character actor.
Yes,
good actor.
Fantastic character.
Stick to that, dude.
I don't get it. And Jason Robards, I think he lost a bet.
I'm so glad you agree with me about the misogyny, though, because I know sometimes you'll be like, oh, Angela, you're being too sensitive. So I kind of thought, well, maybe I'm being too sensitive.
No.
Maybe. But at one point you were like, oh, this is gross. He's just like looking for women to assault. Like,
well, he finds one that they killed, and he said, oh, and I'm quoting the movie, he said, oh, she had probably 3 good more uses out of her.
Yeah,
and that was it.
That was his line, yeah. I mean, he was all mad that they killed her, but I was just like, this movie is awful. So anyway, okay.
Someone on the crew is going to have a conversation with us, though. So.
Boy. Yes, there's some fans maybe amongst us. So. Okay, so we'll move on to our next movie, next sci-fi movie, Sunshine from 2007, directed by Danny Boyle. And it's about a team of astronauts who are set to reignite the dying sun with a bomb and then, of course, come across complications. Man, this movie has a great cast. Cliff Curtis, Cillian Murphy, Michelle Yeoh, Rose Byrne, Chris Evans. Captain America, and a whole host of other great actors. So super exciting. Danny Boyle, an uneven director. He can be a great director. He's an uneven director, I would say. So I never know with him.
It's good or great.
Yeah. Sometimes he's made a few bad movies, but anyway. Okay. So I've seen more of his movies, I think, than maybe you have. So.
You bet.
Okay.
You go ahead and watch all the heroin ones. I haven't watched those.
So The first half of this movie, I would say, I thought was really great. I love the way they set up the team. They all have their roles and they're working together, but there's a lot of tension among them. We've seen that kind of thing before, but I kind of liked it. I liked the way it was designed, and they're all working for the mission.
The sun's dying. Fine, sure. We got to shoot this thing. It'll restart the sun. I'm like, okay, yeah. Sure. That can happen, but that's fine. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
Well, it's not any unrealistic. These other ones where you have to drill down to the Earth's core to explode.
Oh, the core?
Yeah, to put a
You're
bomb
bring
in
up the core?
Well, it's sort of the same concept. They had to throw a bomb into the Earth's core. This is throwing a bomb into the sun. What's the difference?
Core? Oh my God.
In terms of the concept, I'm not saying it's
yeah, I know.
mechanics.
That was a long time
But then
ago.
the movie, the second half or maybe the last quarter goes totally off the rails and gets almost like a horror thing. And then there's this big villain and a bunch of weird special effects, psychedelic
feels
special
like the
effects.
studio stepped in, is what it felt like. But
we weren't sure. I wasn't
because it was
sure.
psychological, it was very smart, it was intelligent. There's the situation where they're going to be doing this because they're in Icarus 2. First of all, if you're going to if your journey is to the sun, don't name your ship Icarus. And if the first one fails, don't name the second one Icarus 2. That's just stupid. But
I liked your line. It's like calling the boat in Jaws shark bait.
Yeah, that's just stupid. But so they find that they've got this one shot to do this with the sun. They find that the first one that had failed, they find they can actually get to it and get its payload, and then they have 2 chances to restart the sun. Which I'm like, totally, that's great. I totally get that. But like, yeah, but then there's danger that happens. Of course, then once that happens and things don't go right, the people who are against it, all of a sudden they're arguing. So now it becomes a fight, but they're all scientists. They've got to keep, their mission, because there's a bunch of billions at home that they've got to keep track of. And I thought this was great. This is great tension. This is great human drama. And then all of a sudden there's this mystery person that shows up that might be the captain of the other ship that's dead, and he's going around killing people, and it's this weird slasher thing. What the heck?
I know, it became a slasher movie at the end, and
it was like, what was this? You just got lazy, or the studio said, no, it's too cerebral. You need to bring somebody in with to kill them with his hands.
I liked it when it was more cerebral. I thought it
was so
smart. Yeah. And then it became, like you said, a slasher movie where, by the way, it was confusing because it was in the dark. And so at one point I'm like, so where's Rose Byrne? Like, her character kind of disappeared, and then she's crawling on the ground, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on anymore.
Well, even then when the Chris Evans character, what he goes through at the end, what he's trying to do, I thought was really good. You didn't need to, just have these people making decisions on their own. There was no reason for this other entity to come into it. It was just like, why would you do this? This was so good. And this film has a huge fan base. The reason why we're reviewing this is because I kept hearing about it and kept hearing about it. Underrated, one of the most underrated films, one of the best science fiction films, one of the best.
Of course,
films
some of those people also said that about Boy and His Dog.
Yeah, but it was like the best films of the last 20 years, and I kept seeing it, kept hearing it. I thought, gosh, I gotta get around to seeing it.
Good cast, I will give them that.
Oh, fantastic cast! And the first half I thought was like, wow, it's going to be this action-ish movie, but it's a thinking man's piece. It's a science fiction film of with somewhat real science. I thought that was really cool. And then to all of a sudden, it really just felt like the studio went, no, you need to put a person in and to kill everybody, and that'll be that's the threat.
You need a good,
that's a real
scary villain. It almost became
not a math equation. That's not a good threat. Let's get someone to kill them. And I'm like, why would you?
Yeah.
Gosh, even that when they're over on the other ship, I remember when they're coming back, that was so nerve-wracking and so well done and so.
Well, and I thought they were going to go somewhere with Michelle Yeoh's character is like the botanist. She's taking care of the plants, and they have all these plants on the ship to self-generate their oxygen,
which
is
awesome.
Really smart.
Yes.
And when they go into the other ship, she finds that was one of the only things that survived with some of these plants. And I thought, oh, there's maybe this little plot. Like, I thought it had to go somewhere else. It wasn't just going to be like, oh, they get to the sun and that's it. But where it went, they kind of just dropped that, and then this guy just starts killing everyone on the ship. And I thought, well, okay, this isn't much fun. So yeah, it was very disappointing. I can't even recommend it because the ending is so disappointing.
No,
I'm giving
I can't.
it 2.5 stars. So.
I would give it like 2. Yeah. I was so boy, that first half was fantastic.
Yeah.
So incredibly smart. Okay, so we're going to move on to a film I didn't think about and how I'm going to have to describe this film because it's a time travel film. Oh, Lord. It's called Timecrimes. It's actually from 2007. It's a foreign film. And I'd heard about this film because, again, this one had gotten on a lot of lists. A lot of people talking about it. There was supposed to be a Hollywood remake with Tom Cruise, so there was going to be some running. That's fine. And so a man who's in his backyard sees a naked woman in the backyard and kind of peeps on her a little bit, and then goes to investigate and gets caught in what we'll say is a time loop, because he finds a place where he goes to hide from what he perceives as a killer in the woods, and gets put in this fantastic time machine that's just this big dome. He gets in water and it closes and it opens up and he's traveled. We don't need any more explanation than that. I'm like, fine, I don't want to need a DeLorean. I don't need any science. Just explain that does that. And then he gets caught in a loop because now he's trying to prevent certain things from happening.
He did.
Let's don't give away the twist. So
That's not
yes,
giving
there's
it
some
away.
things that he did. Well,
Some
the things that he did, he's trying to alter. Correct.
Yes.
And very smart. I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was really, really smart. Now,
Pretty tension-filled. I was on the edge of my seat quite a
my
few
gosh,
things. You
yes.
and I
We
we
watched
watched
this
this one together.
together.
There was a few
Yes.
scenes where we were like, "Oh, stop!
I did the
What
thing,
are you doing?"
I did the thing where it protects you if you hold your hand up in front of you, like when you watch a horror movie, because this is going to protect you from the thing that's not actually going to pop out of the screen.
It's not exactly a horror movie, but it's very tension-filled. I'd say it's like a sci-fi thriller.
Well, at one point in time, I thought there was this maniac out there trying to,
It's more of a
kill everybody.
sci-fi thriller, yeah, but it's very smart. The director Nacho Vigalondo, his big American movie he did after this was Colossal with Anne Hathaway, which also
Which is a
has an
cool movie.
interesting sort of time bending
Yes.
of sorts things,
Two
different
places at one
different message.
time.
What's interesting is they're both very interested in the central character's moral actions. They both have central characters that you think these are the protagonists. And Anne Hathaway's character, you're like, oh, she's this nice gal. She's, doing things. And then in the Timecrimes, okay, he's just a regular suburban guy. And then there's some moral ambiguity, let's say, which if you haven't seen Colossal or Timecrimes, where there's
Ooh, a nice
people,
double feature. Check those both out.
well, the same director, yeah. And he's kind of playing with this idea of people that seem nice not doing such nice things. Because this guy, by the end, I was like, is he kind of a villain? What do you think?
Well, that's the only problem I have with this film. I'll give the film 3 stars because I understood where they kind of went and they were like kind of leaving things ambiguous, but it was just it felt too short. It really felt like we ran out of money. Tomorrow's the last shooting day, so just end this thing quickly. And so that felt, I wanted a little bit more, not in a good way of like, oh gosh, I want to see more. No, it was like, no, I really felt we had some unfinished business and things I needed to see a little more of.
I think, but he does something that we find one of the versions of himself does something that is not very good. No, in fact, it's really bad.
Oh yeah.
And so I thought, oh, well, this guy who we kind of think is the protagonist, hour and a half into the movie, does something really horrible.
Yes.
And a way to cover something. So I don't know. It's very interesting. It's got these kind of moral ambiguities, and it's sci-fi. It's time travel, but he's only traveling back in time like 40 minutes or something. It's not like because when I first heard this was a time travel movie, I'm like, oh, is he going to the old like Westworld? Is he going to the old West or something? No, he's going back 40 minutes in his own life.
Did he go to the medieval world then, or
no?
the Roman one?
The Roman one was the one they didn't. They needed to send someone.
But it had one of the best descriptions. I don't know if you can actually see this on this camera. I can't tell the
Maybe
crew.
Jeff can zoom in.
Well, no, I don't want to do that. But they just showed an arrow where the line, and he said, you're just kind of overlapping. And that was all they really needed to do in the film. I went, oh, yeah, I'm good.
That's how they explained the plot. Yeah. Okay.
So we were both, I got to look back. So, The Face of Another, you just got to find it. Y'all find it. You got to watch it. It's amazing. And then write us at realfilmsubs.com. Let us know what you think of it because it's an absolutely amazing friend. And then make your friends watch it. Westworld, we could not recommend. Boy and His Dog, no. Sunshine, gosh darn it. The first 3
Close,
quarters,
but no cigar.
Boy, it's really, really good. And then just stop at some point in time. And then
Timecrimes,
which we really enjoyed. Yeah, we recommend.
So 2 out of 5, not great, but
So as always, you can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can listen to us on KMUZ. You can go to our website and put in a viewer's submission, a viewer's pick. You can watch us in Silverton. You can watch us in Corvallis. You can, I want to thank certainly our amazing crew, my wonderful co-host, our fantastic sponsors, and I want to thank you for watching. So have a great day and great movies.